absolutely. I totally agree with you. Yeah, look forward to it.
Thanks very much, Mike.
Time now, 23 minutes to 9. So all this week we have been talking about special educational needs, and we've been looking at the challenges faced by disabled children and their families.
Yes, we're rather lucky this morning to have been invited to a school in Wythenshawe. This is Piper Hill High School. It's a remarkable place, and Louise has been there throughout the morning this morning, meeting some rather inspirational young people. Lou, morning.
Morning.
Oh, thank you, Naga. Thank you, Charlie, so much. Good morning, everybody. And Charlie, you're absolutely right. It has been inspiring to be here all day. Also, really, we have been inspired here on Breakfast by all your messages from parents, teachers, carers, whoever it might be, who have engaged with us over this subject of special educational needs over the last week. Thank you for all of those questions. I'm going to talk about that over the next half an hour. And just before we do the next thing, I want to introduce you to Linda Jones. She's head teacher here. Diane, who's here with Josh. Josh is one of the classroom assistants. We'll talk about him in a minute as well. We've got Jonathan Bartley, who's joint leader of the Greens. You'll recognise him. He also has personal experience of this. He has a son with special educational needs. And Graham Robson as well, who is a head teacher at another special school. We've got so much to discuss. Very much here has been what's been really striking, that this is a school where things are the same but a little bit different. And we know from our responses here and from our own investigation, many parents would like their children to come to a school like this in England. In Scotland, there is also an emphasis on mainstreaming of children, and Lorna Gordon has been in to investigate what that means and what it's like.
It's morning at Juniper Green Primary School in Edinburgh. On the timetable for these children in the 4th year of primary, music, spelling, story time, and their daily mile of exercise. Ewan, who has cerebral palsy, takes part in all the classes and activities. He has really good friends here.
What's her name? That's Phoebe.
And he has one-to-one help throughout the school day.
And you and Ewan spend a lot of time together.
We're together quite a lot. We're together every morning. We've been together every morning for about 3 years now. We get a lot back from Ewan. He's a happy wee boy, and he enjoys himself at school.
In Scotland, the aim is to keep children with additional support needs in mainstream schools.
Do you want me to take that from the teacher?
In England, there's been an increase in special schools and fewer children kept in mainstream ones. Ewan's mum, Jane, says the Scottish system has worked well for her son.
It has given him a sense of belonging to his community, a sense of worth and respect. He's with his brother and sister. His independence has increased.
And he really seems to enjoy it.
Loves school.
The teachers here believe the policy of inclusiveness is good for Ewan and for everyone else in the school too.
It's been lovely seeing him grow, flourish and develop in his time here. And I think for the children that are within his class, they benefit hugely, learning to understand sort of different disabilities and different needs, and that children are all the same on the inside.
A quarter of children in Scotland have what's called here additional support needs. In England, it's around 1 in 7. But there's a much broader definition here, which includes family circumstances, health, disability. And though the number receiving extra help in Scotland has in recent years gone up, the number of specialist support teachers has dropped.
There absolutely is a squeeze, and there's a pressure on the workforce and on schools to meet the broad range of needs of their pupils, but there is also exceptionally good practice. So it's the exceptionally good practice taking place that we need to really learn from.
These mums who take their children to the Yard, an adventure play centre for disabled children, told me their priority is the right to choose.
I want an autism school for my son, which has those small classes of about 6, that he will get the best education, because at the moment when he is in the mainstream environment, he is depressive and he is overwhelmed.
For our daughter, it was clear that she got a lot more from mainstream, because what they were offering was more appropriate to how she learns and what she wants to learn about.
The Scottish Government says children should be schooled where their needs are best met, either in special schools or mainstream ones. The local school has worked out well for Ewan. His family wouldn't want it any other way. Lorna Gordon, BBC News, Edinburgh.
And it's wonderful to see Ewan clearly enjoying school. I want to pick up on some of those themes, and particularly that right to choose that was mentioned in that. Linda, you're head teacher here. Tell us a little bit about, you have earlier, but a little bit about the pupils who are here.
The pupils here are aged 11 to 19. They've got very significant learning difficulties and associated other difficulties as well.
And you've talked about it, celebrating difference here, haven't you?
Yeah, that's our core purpose. We celebrate difference. We make sure that every student makes outstanding progress, and we really try to look at the steps of learning and look at the wider curriculum to prepare students with their families for when students leave school.
And it has been an amazing experience to be here today. Obviously, you know, some parents are finding it difficult to get to places like this. So how do the children get a place here?
Students get a place here via the local authority, but we have many students that have come maybe from mainstream schools, and one of the things that we really understand with parents is that it's really good that they do have a right to choose, whether it's mainstream, whether it's special, and they know their child the best. And you know, reflecting on, I've been here for 30 years, it's really important to take in those parents' wishes.
We'll talk about therapy dog. Diane, thank you very much for bringing Josh in, who is just, we all want to have it. It's a bit like Gogglebox, isn't it? We really like him on the sofa.
Down there, we
do, don't we? Jonathan, you've got your own, as well as being a joint leader of the Green Party, you've got your own experience, haven't you, of special education needs from your son, Sam. Just tell us a little bit about him and what your issues have been.
Sure, I mean, he's a powered wheelchair user. He has a differentiated curriculum at a mainstream school, has a smaller nurture class, and then joins other classes. It's been such a battle, you know, we talked about choice. Every parent wants an education that works for their child, and every parent should have the opportunity to have a mainstream education that works for their child, whatever their child's challenges and difficulties. And there's some, you know, major problems of funding, clearly, right across the board. We're all being squeezed. Right, every school is being squeezed very, very hard in the current context of cuts. But also, the mainstream education is becoming increasingly academically focused, rather than the flourishing of children generally. You know, meeting emotional intelligence, you know, the ability to relate. And we've got a very narrow focus, and that is excluding many children, and parents finding they have no option really except to go to a special school or indeed homeschool.
And it was really important to you that he went to a mainstream school. Why has that made a difference, do you think, for him?
It's made a difference for him. It's made also a difference for the children at the school as well. I remember at his primary school when he ran, well, inverted commas, ran the 100 metres with all his other classmates. That was the first time, I think, in that school everyone realised that it really was the taking part that mattered, not the winning. You know, as parents, we all like to say it's great to see our kids take part, but we all like them to win. But actually, you know, when he took part in his sports day, suddenly people realised that it's actually much more than just that trophy. It's actually about the taking part, those relationships, the experience and the journey, and that's important.
And that was a seminal moment for him and for everybody watching.
It was a hugely significant moment, and the result was then in subsequent sports days, Paralympic sports were introduced into the sports day, so there was a richer education. And so when we include children, when we don't segregate, when we get everyone together, we all benefit, we all win.
Graham Robson, you're head teacher of a special school, Manor Green College in Crawley. What are the issues that you're facing with that school at this point?
I think I would concur with everything that Linda has said and everything that's been said around the aspiration of parents and about the right to choose. The trouble is that the right to choose, the right provision is being compromised in some areas of the country by a chronic lack of funding. So I run a school in West Sussex, which is the third lowest funded authority in the country. Special schools aren't part of the national funding formula, so whatever small increases mainstream schools are getting, we won't get any increase at all. But I am already at the stage where my staffing is so low because of the cuts I've had to make over the last 3 years that I'm now in the position of having to phone parents up and say, you know, on an individual basis, if we've got key members of staff out, I'm sorry, I can't have your son or daughter in today.
Which has a massive impact on them, presumably.
An absolutely massive impact. And I take my responsibility as a public servant to spend the money that we have on providing an education which is as good as it can be.
And I know that you are, and you're on the front line of this, and that can have kind of physical implications as well sometimes, can't it?
Absolutely. I mean, I suppose one of our concerns at the moment is that the squeeze in funding is making the word risk much more prominent in my mind. A couple of years ago, I was working with some staff with an autistic youngster, and I was knocked out, and I was taken to hospital in an ambulance. Since that time, we've taken on more youngsters, and our budget has been cut by £70,000 per year. So I'm going into work at the moment, not quite sure whether today is the day that something is going to happen that's going to put me on the front page of the newspapers.
Which is, I mean, I don't even know how to respond to that, but an enormous amount of responsibility.
I feel the responsibility for my staff who are doing an incredible job trying to make up the gaps in staffing that I'm having to tell them we haven't got any choice over.
We have asked for a government minister repeatedly over the last few weeks, and they have said they haven't put anybody up to talk to us. Even though we have, as we've said on the programme, asked repeatedly. There is though a quote from them about funding, particularly apart from education. So they have fundamentally reformed the special educational needs system to put families at its heart. This is backed by over £252 million investment to support local authorities. They're talking about there is more money.
But it's not being distributed fairly. So West Sussex has been told that they won't be getting any more money in their high needs block for the next 3 years. The reason that West Sussex spends so much money on high needs is because mainstream schools have been chronically underfunded for so long that, as we've just been discussing about the need for an inclusive education, West Sussex schools don't have the capacity to do that.
You seem to be saying there's a sort of postcode lottery, and as I say, we're trying to get a response. What would you say about, is that what's happening in some ways?
There's an element of it, but let's just remind ourselves what we've just heard. We've heard that there are schools here who are having to send their children home because they don't have enough money in it. That is absolutely shocking in the 21st century in an education system which should be catering for all. It's not just about a failure to include, it's a failure actually to do the basics in terms of education that we're talking about here. And there's regional variations, but it's coming from the top down.
We did ask them as well whether that money was ring-fenced, guaranteed to be spent only in this area, and they said no to that. So we will continue. You know, we are very we're so impressed by our audience here. We will continue asking these questions. Should we talk about the dog? Because he's here and we all love him. Just tell us, what is the purpose of having a therapy dog?
It's really a therapeutic purpose, and for many of our students, the dogs are really calming. We've worked with pets as therapy for many years, and for other students who have phobias around animals, it's really important for them to overcome those phobias so that they can live a life where you can go out onto the street and just walk past a dog.
And you've got a girl who literally couldn't leave the house because she was so concerned.
Yeah, she had the capacity to travel independently, but she was so frightened of dogs that she couldn't do that. And over 2 years, she became able to tolerate the dog, and she can now get to school independently on the bus by herself.
Well, we all love him.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Diane. I haven't spoken to you, but I'm sorry. But thank you for bringing him in. It's fantastic. And we will continue with the discussion. We're going to hear about what life is like at home on a kind of daily basis, living with a child with special educational needs. First, though, we're going to catch up again with the weather, and Matt is out and about, as you know. Morning. Thank you for joining us. And we're going to talk about now what it's like to live with a child with special needs. We've got various guests here on the sofa. I'll introduce you. John Paul Horsley from the band Big Brothers.
That's correct.
Big Brothers.
Yes.
Have I said that right?
Brothers, yes.
Brothers. Thank you very much.
That's all right.
Tanya Tioro, morning to you. Thank you very much for joining us. You have a website actually, don't you? It's called Special Needs Jungle.
Special Needs Jungle. Yeah.
And your son Giorgio. Thank you, Giorgio, as well. And George Bayliss. George, we'll start with you, just because we will. You've got twin boys, haven't you?
I do, yeah.
Just tell us a little bit about them.
Okay, well, twin boys, and they both have, one has classic autism, one has a working diagnosis of autism. Both have sensory processing disorders as well, and speech and language issues. That was diagnosed, luckily for us, quite early on, about 2.5 years old, and they're now 5. So I've been working towards trying to get them the support that they need to be able to exist and function in school.
How would you describe daily life?
Challenging. One of the issues with autism that quite often comes along is that sleep is disturbed. So my son, who is more disabled by his differences, he typically speaking will sleep between 4 and 6 hours a day. In total, yes. And that's also broken sleep, so it can be 2 hours here, 4 hours here. So my wife and I take it in turns to deal with him through the night and try and keep the rest of the household as well able to sleep and function throughout the day. So that's quite challenging, especially for him, because obviously when you're tired, you are more grouchy, your behaviours are not as good, and your function, your ability to be able to function and process is also affected by that, so it kind of compounds his autistic.
I can see both of you two parents as well nodding.
Yes,
should we come to you, Tanya? So this is your son, Giorgio. Nice to see you. Thank you very much for coming in. Just tell us, and you've got 2 sons, haven't you? Tell us a little bit about them.
Well, Luca and Giorgio, Luca is nearly 20 and Giorgio is 18. They both have, don't want to be talking about it, but it's right there. Autism, Asperger's as it was. It was clear to me that there was something different about them, but lots of people said, well, they're just young or whatever.
Right.
So, but we knew, so we pursued the diagnosis, and they ended up from mainstream, where they weren't thriving, into an independent specialist school, Morehouse, which was fantastic for them. And Giorgio is now at university, and his brother.
Which is just great news, actually. John Paul, tell us about your son as well.
Well, my son is called Richard Michael. He's 9 years old, nearly 10.
Yeah.
But he has classic autism, so he's non-verbal. He's currently at a autistic provision in London, and he's doing really well there. Previously, he was at a mainstream school where they deemed him as maybe uneducatable. So they moved him, and obviously I was fighting to make him stay at the mainstream school. But now that he's moved, he's come along leaps and bounds, and I think that it was a good decision to move him into a specialist school for sure.
What's striking about listening to and reading all the emails and everybody who's been getting contact is the it's the love. They're proud of their children, and there are so many people out there fighting. And you just mentioned that as well.
Definitely. I mean, when Richard was diagnosed, I kind of left the music industry. I had contracts in place and everything. I just begged everyone to leave me alone because I had to concentrate and focus fully on my son. And it might have had an adverse effect on my career, but my family life is so much better, so I'm happy that I made the right decisions.
Go on, you tell, because you were studying to become a lawyer, is that right?
The year the boys were born, I passed my law degree with honours, and I was on the way to doing legal practice certification, and that's when the issues started to compound and sleep became a problem, and I wasn't able to complete the course, but I sort of have commuted that to volunteering actually with a charity called IPSI that provides legal advice to parents to actually help them to try and get a functional and adequate plan.
And there does seem to be this kind of groundswell of support as well, and you're part of that, aren't you, Tanya?
Yeah, well, I started my website back in 2008 now, just to explain, because I'm a journalist by profession, which I had to give up.
Again, I mean, it's just quite extraordinary sitting here with 3 parents, and you've all effectively had to give up on your careers because of this. And your wife as well. Go on, Tanya.
So...
You started your website?
Because I didn't have as big a fight as many parents I knew whose children were, far more disabled than my own. And because I set about writing it as a report and looking at any areas where they might argue with me and effectively cutting them off, I thought, okay, I'm going to write this down to help other parents.
Right.
And it's just grown over the years, and now we have about 150,000 views a month. And 23,000 likes on Facebook. It's just really taken off. And what we're hearing is that far from being made better since the reforms that you've been talking about, it's actually worse for very many people. Parents are losing support when they've been promised by the minister himself that it wouldn't happen, but it's happening.
And John Paul, I can see you nodding to that as well.
Definitely. I mean, as far as support goes, there's not a lot out there, and over the years it's been less and less and less. So as a parent, I've seen a lot of the cuts and how it's affected my family in particular, and I know a lot of people at home are not as privileged as myself, so I'm able to afford the support if I can't, get it for free or whatever. And a lot of other parents are just not in that position.
Giorgio, so you come through the education system and you're at university now, and how are things going for you at university?
I mean, it's great. I get a lot of support. Because of all the support I've never really felt like an acoustic child.
Yeah.
So I've always kind of been able to focus on developing as a person rather than focusing on my needs.
Which is a really positive message. Another thing, so you've all had to give up your jobs. You've all also, the 3 of you, recently been diagnosed with
I was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, which is a type of autism.
Recently?
Yes, in April, in fact. They would call it high-functioning autism.
Right, yeah.
I just think it makes me Superman because my ears are amazing, my eyes are amazing.
Detail, possibly?
Absolutely, but like I'm not perfect with speech. That's my thing.
And you as well?
Last year, yeah.
Diagnosed with autism or?
Yeah, autism. Well, it's the same thing. I mean, I kind of knew, but it was only when the boys started saying, and you're autistic as well, that I thought I would, pursue it.
I don't actually have a formal diagnosis, but definitely when you're talking about you're autistic as well, definitely the traits, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, and you see a lot of the same things in yourself, and testing online, which is available for some autism conditions, it's tick, 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 tick.
Okay. I think that's what makes us so determined, actually,
yes, because
to get the help.
Research as well, just staying focused.
Yes.
Exactly. Oh, it's really, it's really inspirational to meet you all. Thank you very much indeed for your time. We're going to be coming back to this in a couple of moments. We're talking to Nikki Fox, actually, as well. Again, keep sending in those emails. We are reading them all. And right now it's time to catch up with the news, the travel and the weather, wherever you happen to be watching us. Hello, welcome back everybody, and thank you so much for watching. We're going to be talking about really positive messages, hopefully in the next sort of 5 minutes or so. Here with me is Nikki Fox. You will of course recognise her. She's been with us on the programme for how long have you been on?
About 3 years now.
Well, it's wonderful. It's always been wonderful to have you here, particularly today. We're also going to talk to Laura James, who's a journalist. We're going to talk to Abed Ahmed, who is actually, he's a maths teacher. He's one of our viewers, and you've been watching this week, and that's why you're here. You'll explain in a minute.
So I've been stammering since 4. So I've been struggling to basically speak since that age, and I've been struggling at school to voice my opinions, or like even just putting up my hands. So I was told that I might struggle to become a teacher because of my stammer. So that did put me down for a bit, but I didn't let that stop me from becoming a teacher at a secondary school. And so as soon as I became a teacher, the first thing that I wanted to do was run my own stammer support sessions. So I work with about 10 pupils in my school. I've got the same struggle as me. Some of them struggle way more than me, and some not as much. And so what we do in these sessions is like a lot of fun things, so just to get them to talk. Because so the things we do is like drama play, just like teaching them basic things like how to speak to people over the phone, and basic things like telling your name, because I really struggled to say my name.
I felt bad because I asked you earlier. and
I was there like struggling to just say my name. So I just try and teach those kids those small techniques. So I tend to just not speak about stammering, is just to get their confidence.
Which is an amazing thing that you're doing, and it's an amazing thing what you've managed to do. Richard Brown, we should also introduce you. You're a drama teacher.
Yeah, that's right.
Special needs outstanding teacher of the year. I think more than once, in fact.
No, just the once.
Anyway, thank you so much for coming to join us. I'm just wondering, because drama helps you, but we'll come to you in a second. How does drama help young people?
To be honest, it's just a fantastic way of promoting all the things like self-esteem, confidence, social skills. We try and use it at our school just in everything we do, the arts, and we find the impact is amazing. We have these young people that come in, and obviously they're not particularly confident, they don't really know themselves, and by the time they actually leave school, they've been in performances, they've been on the stage, they've made films, and they leave the school knowing who they are and feeling confident, and
let's talk about your work as well, because you are a journalist, and you also have your own, in some ways, special education need, but you didn't know, did you?
No, I was diagnosed with autism very late, which I think is quite common for women, actually. I think it's surprisingly common. I think that we generally have quite a stereotypical view of what autism is, and women tend just not to fit that. So, so it was a bit of a surprise.
I've talked to you about this before, but it was a good thing, was it, the diagnosis?
Yeah, I think it really was. I think if you know stuff about yourself, then you're prepared, and then you can kind of deal with life on a kind of a sort of better footing, really. So I think, before I was diagnosed, I always knew something was different about me, and my brain is the type that wants to kind of know everything. So not knowing what it was really quite confusing.
But as a journalist, that's a top skill, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's great. It's great because, you know, you get to ask difficult questions of people, but you get to really kind of think and really dig deep into a topic, which is brilliant. And it's a great way of interacting. I think with autism, for some people, for me particularly, small talk can be absolutely excruciating. So if you kind of get to walk into somebody's house and then ask them all the questions that everybody really wants to ask them, and you get paid to do it, then it's kind of pretty cool.
It is, isn't it? Nikki, just tell us a little. I mean, because we obviously see you reporting on our programme, but I never get to ask you, you know, how was life for you growing up and how was school?
Well, it's amazing, Lou, quite frankly, that I have got this job because when I went to a mainstream primary school, but they had other disabled people at the school. They had this amazing physiotherapy pool, which was great, but they took me out of all my core subjects to go for a swim. So I always say, I'm a great swimmer, I'm just a bit thick. But I somehow... You just missed out on some lessons. Yeah, I did. But it was difficult. I like so many of the parents that have written into us this week, I have amazing parents who, it wasn't easy for them. They worked so hard to try and, you know, so I could do everything that I wanted to do. You know, work, go to school. I'm lucky also because I think you're lucky if you're blessed with a sort of upbeat kind of personality, and I do have that naturally. But that's not saying it's not difficult. You know, when I was working and early on in my career, I didn't really have any support, and it was a bit of a struggle. I would literally pull up in London in a parking space and stop a stranger and say, I've got to get to a meeting. Could you give me a hand to get my scooter out the boot of my car? And could you give me a hand to get on my scooter? And that's how I was winging it for a very long time. And there are moments where you can do it and you can be happy and positive a lot of the time if you're naturally like that. But there are times where it does get a little bit tough, and you have a wallow in the car, a little cry, listen to Kate Bush, and you're over it.
You're amazing. Ahmed, let's talk about support from you. You mentioned it a little bit, but would support, when you were young, when you were struggling with your stammer, would support have made a difference to you?
Support would have made a massive difference. The first time I got support was when I was 19, so I waited until I was that age. I don't blame like schools or anything, but I just feel as if there should have been like much more to support me. So I do feel as if now kids are probably a bit more supported now than before, but I'm sure there can be much more done.
And for those children who go to your club, the stammer club, I don't know what it's called.
It's the stammer support.
Okay. It must be so inspiring for them to see you. You know, there you are. You're a maths teacher. I mean, it's fantastic.
Hope so. Because I can tell that they are making progress. Like they are getting a bit more louder now, and it's a bit bad at the same time. But it's fine by me as long as they're confident in stammering. So I don't want them to even hide their own stammer. Just stammer confidently. And it's about what they say and not the way they say it really.
This is a very good point. Laura, let's just talk about so many people getting in touch over this week, and here at this school, what's been really striking today is celebrating difference. How important do you think that is when we're going forward with this?
I think it's really important. I mean, I don't think that there is anything inherently wrong with being autistic. It is just a difference. It's like the difference between a Mac or a PC or a cat or a dog or whatever. None's better than the other. They're just different. And I think it's really important that we recognise that, because there are things that I'm able to do that my neurotypical peers would just really balk at, and equally there are things that I struggle with. But I think that's true of all of us, and I think if we can look at the positives with difference, and if we can kind of just make it something that's every day, that we don't kind of think about in that kind of quite big way, then I think the world will be much better.
Richard, any thoughts on that, on celebrating it?
Well, that's what it's all about. It's great to be special and different. Everyone's different, and I think that's important that we sort of promote that that's the way forward.
Nikki, I mean, it has been an extraordinary week here on Breakfast, actually. We've had so many messages and so many people asking us questions. We've tried to answer some of them. But, you know, this is something we're going to stay with. How important do you think is it to celebrate difference, to look at it and sort of work our way around this?
I think this week's been particularly special because in my job as a disability correspondent, it's not the first stressed parent that I've spoken to, you know, with a child with special educational needs, autism, all those kind of disabilities. And I just think what's been so good about it is that the parents that are fighting for so many things for their children and young people, they've actually seen themselves reflected and realised that they're kind of not alone, and that actually it is probably a bit like hitting your head against a brick wall for a very long time, and there's no kind of let up. But there's a certain kind of relief, isn't it, in knowing that you're not alone going through what you're going through. And I think that's what's important, and I think it's important to continually revisit it as well. You know,
and the determination and the pride and the love for their children, that's what's come incredibly strongly through all of the emails and everybody getting in touch. Thank you very much, all of you. Thank you so much for everybody who's been watching us this week, who's been getting in touch. And we've learned so much, and this is a story we are going to stay with this. So we do read all those emails, we do read all the tweets. There are things you want us to look at, just let us know, and we will do that for you. I should warn you that I think here is the choir from the school.